Hi, amigas. Welcome to Empowermente. I'm so happy that you're here. Today, we have a phenomenal, amazing guest. She's a dear friend and an amazing peer. She's doing so many amazing things that I can't wait for you to hear about her journey and everything she's up to. But before we dive into that, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. I have some exciting news that you don't want to miss. Number one, if you are in the Phoenix area, I will be doing a panel discussion with State 48, which is a nonprofit organization for entrepreneurs. It is August 21st, and it's all about mastering marketing. I am beyond excited for this topic. I've already met with the speakers. They have years of experience as founders, as marketing experts, and I'm so excited for you to learn. So take your notebook, take notes, and let's connect in person. Number two is that on September 11th, I'll be at Fair Trade Cafe con nadie más y con nadie menos que Gigi, the first gen mentor. I'm so excited to do this event with her. It's an author stop for her, so it'll be a wonderful discussion about her book, Cultura and Cash. Her award-winning book, Cultura and Cash. So I'm so excited to meet her in person. She does phenomenal work for the first generation community. So if you are interested in financial education and in meeting Gigi, make sure that you attend. And I'll be leading the discussion, asking questions, and I can't wait to see you in person. And lastly, I'm releasing my brand new workshop on August 21st called Book and Paid, a guide to get your first paid speaking engagement. It's a 90-minute training where I'm going to dive into the topics of choosing your niche, positioning yourself, and actually getting paid for something that you love, even if you've only spoken for free until now. Early bird tickets are just $44, so make sure that you grab them now. If you're listening on August 13th, the early bird tickets will run until August 17th, so you'll have a few days to get it at the early bird price. After that, they will go up to $55 until the workshop releases, which is, again, August 21st. This is going to be an evergreen workshop, so even if you're listening to this later, you'll still get access to this workshop. But if you're an early listener, you get to lock in the price at a special rate before it goes up. So if you've been thinking about stepping into a speaking or making it an income stream, this is your sign to sign up for the workshop. So grab your spot, and I can't wait for you to receive the knowledge and start getting those speaking engagements. All right, so let's go into today's guest in a different setting. So I'll pass it down to past Gina to introduce you to Dr. Lisette Sanchez. Hi, y'all. Welcome to Empowerment the Podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode and today's amazing, phenomenal guest. Her name is Dr. Lisette Sanchez, and she's an award-winning bilingual and bicultural psychologist. She's an international speaker, an insightful writer committed to empowering first-generation professionals, especially Latinas and BIPOC leaders. And she specializes in breaking mental health barriers such as the imposter phenomenon and intergenerational trauma while helping individuals cultivate confidence. Oh, I love her mission already. She was raised in Southern California by Salvadorian and Mexican immigrants. Dr. Lisette is deeply passionate about supporting her community, as she is the co-founder of First Gen BIPOC Therapists, a space designed to uplift and support first-generation therapists through professional development, mentorship, and resource sharing. She also founded Calathea Wellness, a virtual platform providing therapy, consulting, writing, and speaking services to bridge mental health gaps for first-generation professionals. As you can hear, we're very aligned in our missions, and her expertise has been featured in LA Times, HuffPost, Refinery 29, Will Plus Good, Hip Latina, and most recently, Oprah Daily. She also leads mental health workshops for Fortune 500 companies worldwide, helping organizations foster workplace mental health, build resilience, and empower first-generation professionals by delivering transformational experiences tailored to their needs. As a trusted expert, she has also appeared on NPR Los Angeles, Univision, and Telemundo. Dr. Lisette began her academic journey at UC San Diego, earning a degree in psychology, followed by dual master's degrees in psychological counseling from Columbia University before completed her doctorate in counseling psychology at the University of Oregon. Woo! I'm so excited to have this absolute powerhouse of a woman on the podcast, and I really hope that you enjoy it. Please leave us a comment and rate the podcast 5 stars if you're listening on Spotify, or like the video and subscribe if you're on YouTube. See you in the episode. Welcome to Empowermente, the headquarters of personal empowerment. Hello, Dr. Lisette. We're so happy to have you. It is an honor to have you and have you in the same day as we all got wonderful news that you were featured on Oprah. And it is really amazing to have your writing work there and display all your experience and your expertise. How do you feel right now?
Oh my God. Thank you, Gina, for asking. I am just beside myself with so many different emotions, excitement, orgullo. I feel like what I want to own the most right now is orgullo, because in our cultura, or at least the way that I was raised, is humility above all. And I'm like, yeah, I can be humble, absolutely. And in the settings in which that makes sense. But when I'm working really hard to trailblaze, to increase representation, that's when our voices need to be loud. And so I am very proud of the work that I do. I'm proud of that essay that I wrote, and I'm so honored that I got to publish that in Oprah Daily. And I'm just, I think, sitting with all of it, of what that means for me, what that means for the person who thinks about wanting to do something like this and sees that it's possible for them. Or I'm thinking of little me, right? So there's lots of emotions. Yeah.
No, I love it. And just, it's such a big deal to have visibility at that scale, right? Like, imagine the people that are going to read it and they're going to feel identified and seen, and then they're going to see who wrote it, and it's going to be like, wow, like phenomenal. So congratulations,
Thank
we're
you. Thank
celebrating
you.
you, so happy for you. And I'm excited for today because I feel like when we're online on social media and we're showing up, people really get to know parts of us, right? Like, you cannot tell a whole story with one Instagram post or one reel, right? They get the general idea of who we are based on what they see. But that's why I love the podcast, because we can dive deeper. And so, what I'm looking to talk to you today about is your roots and your early career and what led you to where you are today. And you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, a speaker. She's a speaker, she's a Latina trailblazer, she's everything. So yeah, so I'm beyond excited to talk to you about all these things. And sometimes I don't know, like podcast structure is very interesting. Sometimes I start from the end and like I'm like, okay, who are you now? Like, and then we work our way back. But today, since I already read your bio at the beginning, we're gonna just dive from the beginning, and you're gonna take us through this journey. So, you are a doctor, you are a psychologist. Can you tell us what led you to psychology? Like, what was that thing that you were like, oh, I am interested in that, and you ended up, of course, being a doctor and being a psychologist?
Yeah, I love this question so much, because but what I also want to say is that I wanted to be a psychologist since I was in seventh grade. So how old were we in seventh grade? 12, 13 years old. And I have this memory of telling my seventh grade teacher, like, I want to be a psychologist when I grow up.
Mm.
She, her answer, I will also never forget, but I want to talk about this because this is when we come to talk about the power of discernment. So my teacher says, you know what? I can see you doing that. You have doctor handwriting. And I thought, your face, right? Discernment, though. She said, I can see you doing that. I said, I heard that part. We don't need to listen to the rest. We don't need to listen to the rest. And I do have doctor handwriting. These are just facts. Like, I do have this. It's fine. But that 12-year-old version of me was able to hear that and just hold on to the piece that was going to benefit me in this decision that I had made, that I wanted to do this. I knew psychology was a career, or being a psychologist was a career, because I went to a psychologist when I was very, very young. When I started kindergarten, so 5 years old, I was terrified. I did not like going. My poor mom, she dropped me off as I would hold on, grab her leg, crying, yelling, like fearing that my mom was abandoning me. And my parents, like desesperados, they didn't know what to do, and so they followed the teacher's advice. And the teacher's like, take her to see this therapist. So my parents did. They took me to a therapist. All I remember from the therapy appointment was the waiting room. There were toys, going into the room, and then suddenly being alone, the door closing. And I don't remember too much more beyond that. But I do know that I stopped being as anxious when it came to going to school, and it helped. And so my
Mm.
first exposure to something like this, to being a psychologist, is that there are people that can help you when you're going through a difficult situation. Now,
Mm.
that was the message I internalized. And so throughout, school, as I was figuring out what I wanted, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be in a career where I get to help people. And it also helped that I was just naturally a really curious person. I just want to understand why were people the way they were? Like, why do we talk about nervios o dolores de cabeza o del estómago? Why do we talk about it in that way versus naming it for what it is? And um, as I've learned throughout this experience, is one, the stigma is very high, especially in marginalized communities. There's high stigma because there's a high distrust of these systems. So you don't go to therapy because why? The belief is that therapy is only when you're in a crisis. So solo para locos, people who are crazy. Um, and you also don't go to therapy when you are looking for help, and when you look at the system, no one looks like you, no one seems to understand your experience. It's very would be discouraging. It's really discouraging to want to look for help and then struggle with it on these multiple levels. And so I think for me, like, I want to do this because I want to help people. I am curious, and I also think we need more representation, and we need to really break this critical mass so that people see this as, this is for us too, right?
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And what a beautiful gift that you had as little Lizette of discernment, of saying, I'm going to take the parts that are relevant and exciting to me, and I'm going to ignore the rest. I absolutely love that. And to think that you had a beautiful experience where your parents were able to take you on that journey to get a psychologist when you were little, and that you had a great experience with them, and that it left a mark on you and say like, oh my gosh, I want to do that too. I actually remember when I was in elementary school, we had a counselor, and I loved that counselor, and I loved everything she taught us. She taught us about mindfulness and like emotional regulation. Pretty much when we were little, we would meditate, and I would love that. And I remember that when I told my dad that I wanted to be a psychologist, he met me with some discouraging words. I think he had dating experiences with women who were psychologists, and he generalized to the whole psychologist population. And I've always loved psychology, and even in high school, when there was like an AP test class, I ended up taking like half of the semester rather than the full, and I ended up passing with like a very high score because I loved it. And so I love that you were able to make it a career and make it something that you love, and that everything aligned for you. I think everyone's path is different, and that's a beautiful way to see it come through. My question is, what was your PhD focused on? Because this, getting a little bit more into the tangible, there's different types of doctorates, right? And you learn that when you're like already in school. I mean, I didn't even know what undergraduate meant, what graduate meant, and all of that. So I'm curious to know, what was your PhD degree focused on, and what were you focused at the time?
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up because same. I had no idea. I was like, I'll be a psychologist. I had no idea. I had no idea what you actually needed. And this is at the time, when I graduated, I did submit everything online, but this is a time where we were barely starting to get computers. I got a laptop, or at least like in terms of for us to be able to financially afford it. It wasn't something we could financially afford for a while. So we got one home computer, and I remember for my laptop when I went to college, we got the display one because that one was cheaper. And that's what I could afford at the time. So you're kind of figuring out making it work. So, my parents, they're both immigrants. I'm the first to graduate high school. So they were still learning and navigating a lot of like, what is this system? What are you supposed to do? And anyway, so it wasn't until I was in college, my first semester, I took a class and they were like, oh, to be a psychologist, you need a PhD or some kind of doctorate. And that's when I was like, oh, I didn't know that you needed a PhD to be a psychologist. And I didn't find out until I was in this class. And then when I found out, I was like, I need to reassess everything because I had too low of a GPA. And I didn't know the first thing about research, and I needed to get that kind of experience. So I'm really glad I took that seminar because it really opened my eyes to what I needed. But again, it goes back to discernment. In that seminar, I could have thought, well, do I need to change my degree? This isn't going to happen right now. Like, what else do I need to do? But because this was my first big dream, I said, okay, well, now I know the different steps that I need to take. I maybe didn't take them before, but now I know what I need to do. So took the steps, ultimately ended up at a PhD in counseling psychology program at the University of Oregon. So I was intentionally looking at for programs that had a strong diversity focus and had a lot of experience or had a lot of research done with the Latina population because I wanted my research to be focused on Latinas. And so that's why I chose to go there. And that school also offered me a full scholarship. So they
Wow.
fully fund, yeah. So it was my degree was paid for, and in fact I got paid to get my PhD. Not very much. Before I knew this, you don't make a lot of money, but I didn't have to take out loans, especially because
Right.
it was in Oregon, and so the cost of living was also less so it made it so that my stipend, the money that I got, helped with my basic expenses. And then because when I went to my PhD program, I went and had a master's first. I did work with my master's. So then I was getting some income in, just a few hours, but that's what helped be able to cover surviving. So people always ask about that, I find, especially in your first gen, like, how did you pay for this? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So stipend, because I had a graduate assistantship and scholarships that helped me pay for the PhD. But my loans are there for my master's program because it just, like it was part of the process. But when I was at the University of Oregon, my research was focused on Latinas in higher education.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually looking at, like, here we're coming back, what the relationships with their teachers when they're in middle school,
No.
like what that relationship does for them as or us as we graduate high school. So does the relationship have any predictors to your post-secondary plans? And so what I found in this study that I did is that students who had stronger relationships with their, I think it was eighth grade, I'm trying to remember because it's been a while, but it was in middle school, they were more likely to have enrolled in some kind of post-secondary training as opposed to people who did not have those good relationships. So further
Wow.
expanding on the importance of support from these teachers, your mentors, the people who, like you admire, even before high school matters.
Wow, incredible work. And I admire people who, like you, who made that into your career and you researched it. That is really amazing. I'm thinking back to middle school me and even high school me. And I think as a person that grew up in the border, um, still like first generation American, there is a big cultural component even in middle school and high school to succeed. I mean, yes, I had good grades and I did really well, but another piece of it is the cultural piece of like making relationships with your teachers. And I actually didn't realize this until I graduated college. I was like, wow, I did amazing in high school, but I didn't get any awards or I wasn't recognized because I didn't have teacher relationships. I mean, they knew who I was, but I didn't take the time to nurture those relationships because it didn't occur to me that I should ask for mentoring or ask for advice. I was just like, oh, they're here to teach. I didn't really know that. So it's amazing that you did that kind of research because it impacts how we if we ever think about having children, like how we educate them, or if we create programs for people in middle school, it's like, okay, this has like a tangible result.
Yeah, exactly. And here's something that I do want to add, Gina. Like, remember, you're also the kid and they're also the adults. And like, so this also speaks to the high burnout that educators maybe feel because they, the educators, it's also on them to help nourish and create spaces for the students to feel comfortable to build those relationships. But let's be honest, if you're a burnt out educator during your extra time, you probably want the downtime. You probably don't want to like further engage. And it probably takes someone who's like, who like is a super squeaky wheel to get you out of that like burnout box, right? So I want to just, yes, children like we can initiate, and it's also on them. It's a whole systemic piece. But
Yeah.
uh, to what you say about your parents, I just want to add, my husband always shares with me like how his parents talk to him about his teachers because he loved a lot of his teachers, and he, the way he talks about them is the way that I'm like, oh, that's beautiful that you had that with them. But it's
Wow.
to what you were saying now, like how the parents talk about it. His parents were like, for you, the most important person, like you have us, your parents, but next are your teachers. Your teachers are like God. You need to nourish those relationships. Those are really important. I know. It's a whole other end of the spectrum, but he was just like, okay, my teachers are God. So he like had to be
Wow.
super focused on nourishing those relationships, on showing up, on being the best student, because that was what was prioritized for him in his household.
Wow. Yeah, and it's so interesting to see how different people were educated and see the impact that that had in their lives. But thank you for sharing your work, and yeah, like it really makes me reflect on the systems because at the end of the day it shapes our lives, and I that's why I don't shy away to talk about politics and specifically policy because that's what shapes classrooms. And I remember I created a summit in partnership with two other people in Austin last year. I remember actually I invited you. Yeah, it was a STEM and mental health summit, and there was so many limitations that we had because of different laws and policy. And it just speaks to sometimes they have a certain person in mind when they think about not only the programming of schools but also like the pay that teachers have. I mean, I saw a viral thread of like they're promoting ICE job postings that are very high paid, like 150,000 plus bonus plus benefits, and teachers are over here struggling, right, with like a livable wage. So you know that it's never been about money, right? So a little side tangent, but just to speak how like the importance of the structure and the systems that we live in, and how advocacy and people who are in those systems play a big role in shaping them and hopefully changing them.
Yes. Yes. No. And it's so many steps. But again, that's, you know what? Kind of came back to why I got this degree. I didn't need a PhD to be a therapist. You can be a therapist
Mm,
with a master's. I don't need a PhD to be a writer. I don't need a PhD to be a speaker. But what I understood very early on was that a PhD opens doors. It makes
mm,
people who maybe typically wouldn't talk to you makes that so that they have to, because you have now a
yeah.
status that's associated. So whether or not people are conscious of this, the fact that, and it's why in certain spaces I will always introduce myself as Dr. Lisette.
Yeah.
And people will say, oh, I'm a doctor. I don't say that. I'm like, that's great. Good for you. I'm not saying to do it, right? I'm just saying
Right.
I worked so long. I was like 12 years of school, another year to get, it was 13 years to become a licensed psychologist. I am not going to, like, again, like I talked about earlier, it's like, I'm going to be humble about a lot of things in our personal lives. You call me by
Not
my
this one
work name.
though.
But in professional spaces, I am Doctora Lisette.
Doctora
I
Lisette.
am Dr. Lisette. And that's what we're owning, right? Because we have to,
Yeah.
that's how we change the system too, through our own like representation, us hitting that critical mass, us showing up and helping people recognize some of the flaws in the system. Because when someone's worked somewhere and they're doing it the way things have always been done,
Yeah.
you need some disruptors in there to change it up.
Yeah. And that's us, the
Yep.
change makers. I love that. And another thing that I admire about you is your creativity to take your professional background and form it into your own business. So tell us, what was that transition like, right? You graduated from your PhD, you achieved this life milestone, you make up 2% of Latinas with a PhD. Is that the statistic?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the new statistics, but I remember the last statistic I saw was, to be clear, is that like I think 1% of the population
Mm,
has a PhD. So
I
it's
see.
2% of that 1%.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And like you said, it carries a different weight, and people treat you differently whether we like it or not. It is a status. So I'm curious to know, why you decided to start your own business. I know that when you are a psychologist, you have a choice. I mean, you can also work for somebody and you can get paid that way, or you can start your private practice, and now you're a speaker and you do different things. So what prompted you to do that? And then we can talk a little bit about why you decided on imposter phenomenon as like a signature topic and all of that. But the entrepreneurship hat in me is very curious.
Yeah. So what I want to start with is probably what a lot of people's stories start off when they decide to make that leap into entrepreneurship. Is I was very burnt out working in a system. I loved the work that I got to do, right? Like this is my dream. Being a psychologist, I've always wanted to do this. And it's such a defeating experience to finally get your dream job only to be overwhelmed by it. Yeah, I became a licensed psychologist December 2019. And so my first few years of being a licensed psychologist were during the beginning of a pandemic when we also had a mental health crisis. So I was working at a university counseling center. I was one of the only Spanish speaking psychologists on staff, the only one of the few Latinas on staff, which meant that my schedule would sometimes be, well, would always be packed. I was going to look and say by number, would always be more full than my peers. And that would be frustrating to me because we all have the same job. I mean, in fact, I was newer, so I probably made less money than all of them. So financially, and I was just exhausted. And it was my first time being in the workplace. So I also didn't understand how to advocate for myself, how to talk to people about things. And I'm experiencing a pandemic myself too, right? I'm going through my own stress around it. So it was this storm of all of these awful stressors and experiences. And I was just trying to get through it because I'm like, this is my dream job. It's only because of this. It's just because it's getting better. And it was actually now my husband who, like, we had just met, started dating around like a little bit after I got licensed, and he was like, have you ever considered entrepreneurship or opening your private practice? And I was like, I have, but I hadn't thought that I would do it so soon because this is my dream role. I want to be here. And it's kind of scary because then you don't have all of the safety net features you get through a job. Through a job, you get your benefits, your health benefits, your insurance, whatever, all of these benefits. And so he's like, I get that, but I think you should try. The worst thing that happens is you go back to a job. These jobs are there. They're not going to go anywhere. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so stressed out. I'm physically sick from the burnout. So I didn't even describe all the burnout symptoms. So I was like, you know what? You're right. Let's take this leap. Let's do this. Let's build this for myself. And honestly, best decision of my life. I'm coming up on celebrating 3 years of being a full-time entrepreneur. And in launching my private practice, getting to see, everyone talks about like in private practice, like that's when you specialize. And so that's when you get to work with the people who, you're the most passionate about supporting. You're trained as a generalist. And then after your license, that's when you start to specialize. So I thought I want to specialize in first gens because I'm not seeing people specialize in that. And we have unique mental health needs. And now, I mean, it's been 5 years since well, 3 years since I went to business full time, but like 5 years since I was licensed and like declared that as my specialty. But now I see so many more people specializing in first gens, recognizing the need that we have. That makes me happy. But back to your question. The question, what inspired me was feeling burnt out.
Yeah.
And then once I went into private practice and I felt free to explore, right? That's when we then started to be more curious and creative with the other hats that I have now worn. But I'll pause there because I talked for a bit.
Yeah, no, no, no. Thank you for that. That is the origin story, the villain origin story for a lot of us. Um, and especially because we don't have usually a lot of role models or a lot of family members or parents that can really share what it's like to have an experience as a psychologist and work for somebody. I know for me, part of my enchantment with corporate America was because my parents hadn't worked in it, but that was what they would have aspired to, right? So then I idealized the version of the job when in reality it's a job, right? Of course it's privileged, it's stable, it's secure, it has many opportunities, and many people are okay with that. But when you come from a place of creation and fulfillment and I want to change the world energy, I think entrepreneurship is definitely a great path. And so it's amazing to see all your progress. I graduated with my master's in 2019. So we have similar timelines in that sense, but I started full time for entrepreneurship in 2023. So 2 years, almost 2 years. From those experiences, you mentioned that you decided to do entrepreneurship in your private practice, and from there things started to open up for you. I'm curious to know how you landed on, for example, speaking engagements, how you landed that you wanted to be a writer, and I love that. I love multi-passionate queens. I love it. So yeah, I'm curious about that.
No, I love, and thank you for saying that. No, yeah, multi-passionate, but it's all connected. My
Yes.
writing informs my speaking informs my writing, and what inspires me is every session that I'm in when I sit there and I start to notice. My job is to notice patterns, right?
Mm,
That's what I do. I sit with people, we identify patterns in their life,
mm,
patterns that are impacting them, whatever it might be. And then I step back and I'm like, well, what are the patterns that I'm seeing across everyone that I'm working with or across everyone I've ever worked with? Because while University Counseling Center was where I ended, I ended working for systems, at least at this time, I've worked in community mental health. I've worked in community colleges. I've worked in and I've experienced and have been exposed to settings in hospitals and prisons with children. So I have so many experiences. So even from those experiences, I still take those experiences to shape what I write about, how I talk about things, right? So it's all very much
yeah.
connected. And you don't, even though it's interconnected, people don't choose necessarily to do it all. I choose to do it all because I loved it. So let's talk about how that even happened. So I think it's very serendipitous when certain experiences lead to others. And I think you probably can attest to this experience of when you've opened yourself up and when you're clear on your purpose and your alignment, that opportunities are plentiful because now you're finally seeing them. They were always there, but you weren't seeing them before because you weren't looking for the right things, right? Or you weren't asking the right questions. But once you step into that light, you're like, okay, I know what questions to ask. I know what to do. So I've started private practice, and then I knew I wanted to do speaking because I wanted to increase my impact. Therapies one-on-one, speaking I can do more, and also for financial reasons, right? I wanted to diversify my income that I was bringing in. So I was like, I want to do this, but honestly, it was just finding opportunities, trying them out, and finding that I really enjoyed it. So growing from there. And it wasn't really until this year that I made the intentional decision of I am pursuing speaking as a primary pillar of my work. The last 2 years, it was just any opportunity I had, I would take. There was no strategy behind it. This year, there's a little bit more strategy. But I really enjoyed it. And I found that when I would have a speaking opportunity, I occasionally would have opportunity for more, and that's what happened with Hip Latina. With Hip Latina, they invited me to speak and do an Instagram live with them, and I enjoyed it. And I'm like, I really like this. I want to do more. So that was sort of my guiding. This is again clear
Mm,
for yourself. Like, I like this. I'd like to do more for them. Uh, Maybe I can. And so I asked, like, can we collaborate more in any way? And they said, so ask. Remember, ask the
mhm.
right questions. But even just asking the question, they were like, do you write? I thought, well, I mean, I've written a dissertation, like I've written, but let me rewind here. Like I was in remedial writing classes in college. I struggled to get through all of my writing assignments,
Wow.
my master's and doctoral programs. Like writing was not something that came easily to me or that I loved in any way at that time. But but I was always having to write about what everyone else wanted me to write about, not about what I wanted to write about. So I
Mm,
thought,
yeah.
like, do you write? Would you write about the imposter phenomenon? I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I will write that. I want to write that. I spent way too much time on the article. I submitted it. And as hard as it was, I was like, I want to stop thinking of myself as not a good writer. I want to know,
Mm,
like, I know that I can do this. I just have some trauma from my writing experiences, but I can get through this. And so each time I'd ask, I pitch myself, I try again, I do another one. And now I have an ongoing writing assignment with that Hip Latina. And then this year, because I'm being more intentional about it all, I had a moment of like, why not pitch myself somewhere else? Um, and that's when I pitched myself to Oprah Daily, not fully expecting what happened, which was, oh, the next day I was approved. I was like, yes. And in the next 3 weeks, I did all of the paperwork and wrote my article or the essay that got published today. And like was feeling just like I was at the beginning of my writing journey of like, oh my God, like I'm doing all of this. I'm learning so much in the process. And but reflecting on it now, it's I didn't love writing as much earlier. It was just something that I did because I wanted to break out of my mindset around like I'm not a good writer, or writing is hard for me. And now I will say like writing is still hard. Writing is not like the easiest thing, but I've learned to love the process of clarifying my thoughts, understanding something on a much deeper level. And remember when I started this, I wanted to expand beyond the one on one for the impact. And I've learned and realized that my impact through writing is also much higher than the one on ones, right? So I've my long-winded way of saying like I think I fell in love with it over the time. I challenged myself because I wanted to be clear, my own challenge, my own dream.
yeah. Yeah.
And then I found that I loved it. And so how all these things come together for me is I maybe don't have the traditional way of being strategic about what I choose to do, but I have a big dream. And I always think about what are the things I say yes to the opportunities that help me towards that big dream. And I've always had a dream of writing a book. And so that's why I knew that I needed to get over my fear of the writing process because then I'll never write that book. So I did that. I have a dream of like being able to use my voice in more spaces. So, started with doing Instagram lives and fumbling through every single word. But doing it, you have to be a beginner in everything. So, um, all of everything now is going towards that big dream of the book for now, but speaking, writing, therapy, all of it's connected.
Thank you for sharing that. I love to hear that perspective of Calathea wellness and what it has turned to. And of course, I'm obsessed with that perspective of life bringing you the opportunities once you're open to them, because that is seriously how it happens. I mean, our brain can only filter a certain amount of information, and when we're focused on the good things come to us. And so I'm glad that it happened in a serendipitous way where you have gotten opportunities to explore yourself further in different mediums and different ways.
Yes, yes. And I want to just say, because Calthea wellness, we didn't define it. So Caltheas are a plant species and they represent new beginnings or to turn over a new leaf. And because I specialize in first gens are the new beginnings. So
Yeah.
that's the connection there to Calthea. Why Calthea? And I guess it also represents my path, right? Because I'm constantly in search of turning over a new leaf as I'm on my own new beginning, new path.
Yeah, amazing. And what I'm curious to dive a little bit deeper is how you manage all of this with your impact in the community. I think we have similar journeys in the sense that, we do different mediums to try to create an impact on the community. And you started also first gen BIPOC therapist, you have your private practice, you do content, you're a writer, you do speaking. I have a few questions and then you can decide what
Okay.
to focus on. But how do you decide what to pursue? Basically, I think you mentioned
Mhm.
quite a bit like, hey, like if this is exciting, if aligns with my bigger dream, is kind of how I decide. And how do you protect your energy and stay aligned when so much is being asked of you in different directions as like a leader and as a person that helps people in their healing journeys? It
Mhm.
can be heavy.
Yes, it's okay. How do I answer? So what I want to say is yeah, how I decide is very much like, is this in alignment with my bigger dream or not? There's definitely opportunities that come up that sound appealing because you're like shiny, and is that my kind of shiny or is that someone else's shiny? Like, right,
Yeah.
like what that looks like. So, and then being intentional around like what I'm saying yes to and what I'm maybe putting, like what's going to be priority and what's getting less prioritized. So for example, this
Mhm.
I know that my capacity right now is one article a month. So my one article this month was with my new publication versus how I typically publish with Latina. I'm like, I'm gonna just pause while I like I don't want to navigate both because I want to give myself that gift of time. So that meant saying no to income though, right? Like to be in a space
Yeah.
no to that. So I'm in a space where I feel financially stable, where I can make some of the decisions, where I'm not making decisions from a scarcity mindset. I
Yeah.
trust I will have more income, that opportunities will not go away because I pause for a moment. And so that's also a big part of that mindset of trusting yourself and the processes that you're participating in, right? So
Yeah.
and then it's realizing, well, what are dreams that I'm trying to work on my own, and then what are dreams that I want to do, but I understand I can't realize on my own. So that's, for example, first gen BIPOC therapists. Like I want a community for first gen BIPOC therapists. And we launched that last year. And it's something that's with me and two other mental health therapists. So um, Victoria Cortez and Claudia Parada, and they're amazing people. And I'm so happy that I get to work and collaborate with them. And I would not be able to do first and BIPOC therapists without them because it really is a team effort. And it's also something that we are working on growing maybe a bit more slowly, more organically.
Mhm.
It isn't the number one. Like we are all therapists in private practice, so we're all building out other things, and this is sort
Yeah.
of like a passion that if I was to describe a professional hobby, like that's sort of where it's at. Like we get to meet
Yeah.
once a month with other therapists, like it's very like a low. It doesn't take a lot of energy because we split it amongst the three of us, and we all it's passion, right, that we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So for some things, you have to prioritize, like even sometimes month by month, week by week. For other things, it's
Mm.
asking for help, doing it with other people.
Mm.
But so what I would say, and other times it's accepting like you just can't do it all at once, but you can do it all. Like I want to write a book, and I will tell you my vision board this year was like incredibly ambitious. uh, that involved like pitching, like I think I'm looking, let me see. It involved writing and pitching my book, a book proposal.
Yeah.
I all of the boxes around the book are just I've accepted. I was like, unless something changes in my current schedule this year, that's getting shifted into next year. But all the smaller steps that I'm still taking will all ultimately still help me with that big dream. So it's okay for me.
Yeah.
So it's also reassessing, right? Every year you find different periods at which you reassess. For me, I've been doing them quarterly. So every quarter I look
Yeah.
at my goals and I'm like, is this still realistic for me right now?
Yeah. And things change so much when you're an entrepreneur and you realize the time and effort that some things take. And then sometimes you're like, yes, let me double down on that. And then sometimes you're like, you know what? If I continue at this pace, I won't make it. It's just too much.
Yeah.
And yeah, just normalizing that pivot and I guess reassignment and recalibration.
Yeah. So then I would say I had questions for myself, so like that I can share with you. So
Yeah.
it's does this align with my bigger vision?
Okay.
Does it light me up? And realistically, can I hold it right now, or do I need to put it down for later?
I'm gonna write down those questions for myself. Thank you for helping us get through this because yes, it is hard to know what to prioritize, especially with ADHD. That's one of the things that I struggle with the most. So I love that. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing. And as we're getting ready to wrap up, what's something that you're most excited about right now, and how can people support you and your work?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, in this moment, obviously, I'm most excited about being here with you. Like, here's the thing. Something that I haven't talked about. There's so many perks to showing up online, sharing your story, and sharing your journey. And I, by far, community is what I value the most. And so I find that being able to connect with other first gen trailblazers who are living out their dreams, their multi passionate dreams, like is the best gift of entrepreneurship I could have. And so like, I had followed you on like TikTok, I think for a while. And then one day I was like, I should just send her a message. Like we should be like, why, what is stopping me from this? Right. And we get in our heads because you see these numbers, you're like, that person has that many followers. Will they even see my DM? And I think I first was like, I think I attended an event that you hosted. I think
Yeah, vision board. I remember.
I was like, oh, I follow her stuff. Like, I want to show up. I want to see this because I want to I want to connect with people more. And I was like, oh, okay, we vibe. So I was like, this is great. I want to do more of this. And so I love every time we have our calls or our check-ins, however frequent or infrequent they might be, because I also like we all have busy lives. So what I would say, that's why I'm really excited about being on this podcast, because this podcast doesn't just represent like a surface level connection. It represents a much deeper connection and understanding of to first gen Latinas who are, like we live in different spaces. We're different ages. There's so many differences, but there's also so much more that unites us. And so, as cheesy as that might sound, that's
No,
how.
I love that. Thank you for allowing us to simmer in the present moment. It is so beautiful to think of all the things that had to happen for us to be here and the journeys that we had to just have this conversation and to be able to speak from a place of I feel good, I'm living my dream. I have bigger dreams and that's exciting and we can do it all together. So I really appreciate that.
Yes, yes. And with first gen BIPOC therapists, our like mantra is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so
Yay.
it may take time, but we can do it all, especially together. And so that's
Yay.
that's what I'm most excited about in terms of just like in this moment, in the present moment. But then you asked how people could be in touch.
Yeah, how can people can support you right now? I
Mhm.
know that you have First Gen Sin Barrera, so tell us a little bit about that and how we can support you.
Yes, and then I can share with you how that connects to the big dream too, because
Yeah.
it all connects, right? So first of all, First Gen Sin Barreras are these free reflection. It's a series of reflection guides that I'm releasing to my newsletter subscribers in 2025. It's free, and every quarter I release a new one. First quarter was on the imposter phenomenon. Second quarter is on trailblazing guilt, and you fill it out at your pace. each quarter I request feedback from my community and then adjust each one accordingly. Now I have a
Mhm.
goal of releasing an actual workbook that's more focused on these. And so that's right now essentially everyone is helping me create this and build this, but that's why I'm giving it for free so that I can get people's feedback, see what people like, what they don't like, and almost beta testing
I
people.
love that. I actually did one of them. I didn't post about it, but I did it. I need to give you feedback on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the feedback. And here's the thing, like not everyone posts, and that's fine. That's why I'm just like, as long as you'll give me feedback every so often, especially if you really felt something was disconnecting in some way, because I it's all an idea, and you gotta like when I do it, it's hard because I know what I want from it. So I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm not understanding, what someone else might need a little bit more prompting for. So would love your feedback on that. But and that's for anyone listening. Download the guides.
Yeah.
Send me an email about how you feel about it. Post about it, however you want. Like I'll send surveys, but give me the feedback. Have it for free. And I'm also working on. I participated in this program, and I have a milestone. It's NASDAQ milestone circles.
Oh,
So if
yes,
you're
yes.
an entrepreneur, I've shared it with you.
Yes.
Um, but if you're an entrepreneur, it's free. It's ongoing. It's 12 weeks. You get connected with a cohort and a mentor, and then you set like a goal for the 12 weeks. So I set a goal to create another resource that's going to be focused on tips for first gen grads as they're entering the workforce, because that's where I was seeing more of a need based on some of the
Mm.
comments I was hearing. And so I actually sent out a survey for that, and I'm having a focus group for that this week so that I can again get more information from. That's where my research background helps, because I know that's like I can create this, or I can also meet with a lot of people and like collect
Yeah.
data and like make this be informed, an informed resource. So if you sign up for my free guide, you're signed up for my newsletter, so you'll know when I release that a new guide that's going to be on. It's I'm calling, I don't know if I'm calling it this, but right now the tentative title is like 10 things every first gen graduate should know before entering the workforce,
Wow.
something like that. We'll see. So
I
if
I
you're,
need to have a time machine, and then so you release it, and then we go back in
I
time
know,
to 2019. I
yeah, I
love that.
know.
But I love
Uh,
that we're creating things that we wish that we had.
exactly. So creating things I wish I had, and so if you'll, that's what I'm asking for most, just for people to support that. I think my socials will be in the show notes, but I'm on Instagram the most active in terms of like socials, but I'm trying to show up more on LinkedIn. So
Mm.
on Instagram, I'm the first gen psychologist, and I added that to LinkedIn as well. So if you search me as Lisette Sanchez or the first gen psychologist, whichever one of those, will link them. But connect with me on both because I'm trying to build my LinkedIn. I
Trying to
know,
grow
Gina.
our friends. I love that.
We're just trying. I'm trying to help me out here,
Yeah, we
but
are.
otherwise, I'm yeah, I'm just feeling really full right now.
Yes, thank you so much for accepting being on Empowerment Day and being on the podcast and sharing your journey and your story and for all the work that you do on the daily. You do the work daily. So we're so happy and grateful. Any piece of advice you'd love to give a first gen Latina who's wanting to step into her power, whether that be through entrepreneurship or through her brand or through public speaking before we part ways?
Oh my God. Okay, okay, okay. So with this one, like honestly, like I'm sure you feel this way, like with entrepreneurship, I'm just like, wow, anything is possible. But so what I want to say to Christian Latina wanting to step into her power is just say that you are already there. You just need to learn how to embrace it and stop waiting for permission.
Yes. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
I
No,
love
no,
that.
permission. We just need to take action. And so I know when I say it like that, people listening may think, yeah, but then the action you just thought of is too big. Think of a smaller action. Think of an action that actually feels possible for you. That's your first step. Sometimes I think we see the big dream and we think we have to take these leaps towards it. The baby steps get you there in this, like it's the same process. And in fact, you build a stronger foundation when you're taking smaller steps. So,
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Lizette, for being here. Appreciate you.
thank you.